Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Sri Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Swami Maji, when are you ready, you can start, Maji. I'll share my screen.
Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All praise to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet. Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevayat Bhagavate Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namah. Namo Pankajanabhaya Namo Pankajamali Namo Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangri. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 28, verses 12 to 22. Kapila's instruction on the execution of the devotional service. Text 12. When the mind is perfectly purified by this practice of yoga, one should concentrate on the tip of the nose with half-closed eyes and see the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 13. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has a cheerful, lotus-like countenance with ruby eyes like the interiors of the lotus and swarthy body like the petals of the blue lotus. He bears a conch, disc, and mace in 3 of his hands. Text 14. His lions are covered by a shining cloth, yellowish like the filaments of lotus. On his breast, he bears the marks of Srivatsa, a curl of white hair. The brilliant Kaustubam gem is suspended from his neck. Text 15. He also wears around his neck a garland of attractive salmon flowers, and a swan of pears, intoxicated with its delicious fragrance, hums about the garland. He is further superbly adorned with a pearl necklace, a crown of pairs of armlets, bracelets, and anklets. Text 16. His lions and hips encircled by the girdle, he stands on the lotus of his devotee's heart. He is most charming to look at, and his serene aspect gladden the eyes of the souls of the devotees who behold him. Text 17. The Lord is eternally very beautiful, and he is worshipable by all the inhabitants of every planet. He is ever youthful and always eager to bestow his blessings upon his devotees. Text 18. The glories of the Lord is always worth singing, for his glories enhance the glories of his devotees. One should therefore meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead and upon his devotees. One should meditate on the eternal form of the Lord until the mind becomes fixed. Text 19. Thus, always merged in devotional service, the yogi visualizes the Lord standing, moving, lying down on the or sitting within him. For the pastimes of the Supreme Lord are always beautiful and attractive. Text 20. In fixing his mind on the eternal form of the Lord, the yogi should not take a collective view of all his limbs, but should fix the mind on each individual limb of the Lord. Text 21. The devotee should first concentrate his mind on the Lord's lotus feet, which is adorned with the marks of the thunderbolt, a gourd, a banner of lotus. The splendor of their beautiful ruby nail resembles the orb of the moon and dispels the thick bloom of one's heart. Text 22. The blessed Lord Shiva becomes all the more blessed by bearing on his head the holy water of the Ganges, which has his source in the water, that was the Lord's lotus feet. The Lord's feet acts like thunderbolts, hurtle to shatter the mountain of sin stored in the minds of the meditating devotee. One should therefore meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord for a long time. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Vamsi, when are you ready, you can start. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. I'll begin with a short prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyatyade Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Uh, we are continuing chapter 28, text 12 onwards. So, in this chapter, as we all are aware, that Lord Kapila is instructing Mother Devahuti, and he is instructing on the path of yoga. And in this chapter, he is explaining how to meditate on the form of the yoga by following the process of Ashtanga Yoga. And in that series of verses, in text 12, so Lord Kapila is instructing, when the mind is perfectly purified by the practice of yoga, one should concentrate on the tip of the nose with half closed eyes and see the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that Godhead is Krishna. So Prabhupada is clarifying. From Krishna comes all the expansions. Lord Balaram comes from the right side, and then from Lord Balaram, Lord Sankarshan, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, the Chaturvyuha forms. And then many expansions, and finally the Purusha avatars. And this, one of the Purusha avatars is Shirodakashayi Vishnu, who is the Paramatma or Super Soul sitting within the heart. So one who is practicing this kind of meditation on the Super Soul of the heart should meditate on Krishna, who is expanded as Paramatma in the heart. And interestingly, Prabhupada many times I think in one of his classes, he mentions how to chant the holy name. And here Lord Kapila is mentioning that as well, is half closed eyes. Very difficult to practice. Even while chanting the holy name, Prabhupada says that we should not close our eyes fully. We will sleep. At least I sleep. So Prabhupada says that the best way to chant the holy name, if we want to not get distracted by seeing something else, is half closed eyes. It's just one recommendation that Prabhupada gives. It is not a mandatory thing, but this I've heard from Srila Prabhupada. In text 13, yeah, now Lord Kapila begins to explain from this verse onwards, I think until 35, 36, not sure the number, but he starts explaining about, okay, because we have to meditate on the Supreme Lord, and it is not something void. Krishna is a person. So now Lord Kapila is giving the descriptions of how Lord Krishna actually looks. He's giving every single detail of how Krishna looks in his super soul feature. So Krishna has a cheerful lotus-like countenance with ruddy eyes like the interior of a lotus and a swarthy body like the petal of a blue lotus. He bears a conch, disc, mace in three of his hands. So Prabhupada writes that Krishna is not impersonal or void. Mind should be fixed on the personal form of the Lord, whose attitude is cheerful. And Prabhupada also says, Bhagavad Gita also confirms that one should concentrate his mind on the personality of Godhead, Krishna. And now Prabhupada comes to an interesting section where he explains Krishna's color. The color of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is described here as Nilotpaladhala, meaning that it is like that of a lotus flower with petals tinted with blue and white. Prabhupada saying, people always ask why Krishna is blue. The color of the Lord has not been imagined by an artist. It is not that maybe Prabhupada liked blue color, so he instructed his disciples to paint him blue, Krishna blue. No. It is described in authoritative scripture. In the Brahma Samhita also, the color of color of Krishna's body is compared to that of bluish cloud. The color of the Lord is not a poetical imagination. Srila Prabhupada is writing. It is not imagination. It is directly from Shastra. In fact, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in one purport, in Srila Prabhupada book, he says, Prabhupada quotes his Guru Maharaj that Krishna is in the form of Sham. Sham Rupa is a color, blue color. And his eyes resemble the inside of a lotus flower, and his four hands, he holds the four symbols, conch shell, disc, mace, and lotus. And in text 14, so continuation goes on. Krishna's description of his loins are covered by a shining cloth, yellowish like the filaments of a lotus, and on his breast he wears the mark of a Srivatsa, a curl of white hair. The brilliant Kaustuba gem is suspended from his neck. So we are all aware why Krishna has a Srivatsa mark, because he has, in his expansion, he has Goddess Lakshmi on his chest. And Prabhupada writes in Krishna book that even Mother Lakshmi wants to associate with Rajendranandan Krishna. But because she is not able to give up the opulence of Vaikuntha, she is not given entrance to associate directly with Krishna. So Krishna, because she is so, this is explained in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains that because she was so eager to associate with Krishna, Krishna was so kind to give her a presence on his heart in the form of Srivatsa mark. And all his expansions also carry the same Srivatsa mark. The Lord is full in 6 opulences, one of which is wealth. He is very richly dressed with valuable jewels, which are not visible within this material world. Text 15. Krishna also wears a neck of a garland of attractive sylvan flowers, and a swarm of bees intoxicated by its delicious fragrance hums around the garland. He is further superbly adorned with a pearl necklace, a crown, and a pair of armlets, bracelets, and anklets. So Prabhupada writes, actually in Vaikuntha or spiritual sky, there is nothing but freshness. Nothing is dull there. Everything is active. Prabhupada will give the reason why. Even the flowers picked from the trees and plants remain fresh, for everything in the spiritual sky remains in its originality and does not fade. The fragrance of the flowers picked from the trees and made into garlands does not fade, for both the trees and the flowers are spiritual. So Prabhupada is giving the reason. How come they are always fresh? Bees are always swarming around the flowers that Krishna is wearing as a garland. Because they are spiritual. They are not matter like in this material world. If it doesn't mean that the garlands that are offered to the deities in the temple or to any Archa Vigraha form are material. They are spiritual. So when some devotees give us garlands, we should not think that, oh, they are material because it's in the material world. Bhagavad Gita explains that anything, Brahmarpanam Brahma Havir, that verse, that anything that is offered to Krishna becomes spiritual. And when we are fortunate to have that, we need to honor that because it's nothing but spiritual. It's not an ordinary garland. I learned this from Sampradaya Prabhu. He taught me a good lesson. When the flower is taken from the tree, it remains the same. And it does not lose its aroma. The bees are equally attracted to the flowers where they are on the garland or on the trees. The bees are equally attracted to the flowers. The bees hum around the fresh flowers and their sweet sound is enjoyed by the Lord. It's very interesting, right? And Prabhupada writes in the purport, in the spiritual world, 1 minus 1 equals to 1. 1 plus 1 also equals to 1. It is so nice. I heard that in the spiritual world, everyone is trying to please Krishna. We will see in the, I think we might have already read in the 15th chapter, where the descriptions of Vaikuntha planets are given, where the bees and the animals and everyone are coherently coming together and to try to please Lord Vishnu. The same goes on in Golok Vrindavan also. In every single Vaikuntha planet, all the inhabitants are trying to please Krishna, and not separately. Not that, oh, this is my turn to please Krishna, so you shut up. No. Everyone is together. If somebody is trying to please Krishna, they all go together. That's Sankirtan. Actual Sankirtan means when everyone comes together without any envious feelings, in a cooperative manner, trying to please Krishna, not to please myself or not to please my senses. And here we can see the garland is trying to be as fresh as possible. The bees are buzzing around the garland. For what? Not for its own pleasure, not to take the honey out of the flower. No. In the 15th chapter, we studied that the bees are humming. All the animals are quiet when the bees are humming. For what? For the pleasure of Krishna. So everyone are coming together to please Krishna in the spiritual world. Text 16, his loins and hips encircled by a girdle, he stands on the lotus of his devotee's heart. He is most charming to look at, and his serene aspect gladden the eyes and souls of the devotees who behold him. Lord is so beautiful that the devotee yogi does not wish to see anything else. Prabhupada writes, the perfection of life is to see Krishna face to face, which is what we are all aspiring, right? We don't know which lifetime, but that is our perfection. His desire to see beautiful objects is completely satisfied by the sight of the Lord. When Dhruva Maharaj saw his Ishtadev, after meditating on the form of the Lord as exactly described by Sri Narad Muni, after seeing Lord Vishnu, he forgot about all his personal ambitions, that he wanted a greater kingdom than his father, great grand. He forgot everything. Prabhupada writes here, because the devotee is completely satisfied. When our desires to see, hear, touch, etc. are dovetailed for the satisfaction of Krishna, they are on the level of topmost perfection. So many examples in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. Ambarish Maharaj used all his senses to please Krishna. Though he had all the opulences, he was the ruler of the planet, but he used everything for the service of Krishna. Prabhupada writes, this is the topmost level of perfection. This is actually Yukta Vairagya, not just simply using computer and cell phone alone for the sake of Krishna. Using everything for the service of Krishna. That is actually Yukta Vairagya. Text 17, the Lord is eternally very beautiful and he is worshipable by all the inhabitants of every planet. He is ever youthful, always eager to bestow his blessings upon his devotees. Prabhupada writes that Supreme Lord is very beautiful. It is not that he appears beautiful to the devotees, but is ultimately impersonal. That is wrong understanding. Ever existing, Shashwat. The beauty is not temporary. It is ever existing. He is always youthful. Prabhupada quotes, Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Nava Yavanam Cha. He is always beautiful. We never see Krishna with a beard or a mustache. Prabhupada writes in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, so the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he quotes in the incident where Srila Sanatan Goswami finally comes to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Sri Sanatan Goswami has a big beard because he was serving the Muslim government. Though he was at heart a devotee, he had a big beard and everything. And he was sitting on the veranda of the house where he goes to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu sends that person to see, can you see somebody sitting? And this devotee goes outside and he sees, I don't see anybody. Mahaprabhu says, no, you go and see, there should be a devotee sitting outside. The devotee again goes outside and he says, I don't see anybody. He says, no, go and see. And then finally, Srila Sanatana Goswami is sitting there. And because Srila Sanatana Goswami he's not shaven or anything. He's just looking like a altogether different person. He's having beard, mustache, and so many other things. And when Mahaprabhu calls him inside, Srila Sanatana Goswami falls flat on the ground, offering obeisances. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the first thing he instructs his disciple to take Srila Sanatana Goswami to go to the river, give him a nice bath, shave him nicely. And Prabhupada writes in that purport, devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu means that we should be clean shaven. Prabhupada writes, if we have beard and all these things, we are no better than hippies. The Lord's facial expression always indicates that he is ready to show favor and benediction to the devotees. For the non-devotees, however, he is silent. So Krishna offers benediction for his devotees, but for the non-devotees, he is silent. Doesn't mean that he is partial. Ye tamam prapadyante tam stateva bhajamyaham. To the degree somebody wants to get closer to Krishna, Krishna reciprocates accordingly. It doesn't mean that he is partial. He is specially inclined to those engaged in bhakti, Prabhupada writes. All living entities are Krishna's sons, but he is specifically inclined to someone who is practicing bhakti. Krishna is sold out to his pure devotees. That is why pure devotional service is very rare. Prabhupada writes, to find a pure devotee is very rare. Bhagavatam explains. So if at all we come across a pure devotee, like Srila Prabhupada and his disciples, we should not miss a chance to go and hear from them. Text 18, the glory of the Lord is always worth singing, for his glories enhance the glories of his devotees. One should meditate on the eternal form of the Lord until the mind becomes fixed. When one is accustomed to thinking of the innumerable forms of Krishna, all the different forms of Krishna, he has reached the perfection of yoga. That is samadhi. This is explained in Nectar of Instruction by Srila Rupa Goswami also. And that is our aspiration, to always remain absorbed in thinking of Krishna and his pastimes. And Prabhupada reveals his heart many times, like in many times in his purport. The devotees especially see the Lord in the beautiful blackish form of Shyam Sundar. That is Prabhupada's mood. That is the perfection of yoga. This yoga system should be continued until the mind does not vacillate for a moment. That is our aspiration, right? That our mind, even for a single moment, doesn't go here and there. Very difficult state, but this is what we are aspiring for. And so whenever we are chanting in the morning time, Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Pashyanti Surya Jiva Takshuratatham. The form of Lord Vishnu is the highest individuality and is always visible to the sages and saintly persons. Krishna is visible only to Bhakta, not to anyone else. The same purpose is served when the devotee worships the form of the Lord in the temple. There is no difference between devotional service in the temple and the meditation on the form of the Lord, since the form of the Lord is the same whether he appears within the mind or in some concrete element. So to think that Krishna is just a stone in the temple, but he is in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam is not the proper understanding. Krishna comes out of his his mercy to take service from his devotee. And to think that Krishna is some kind of made of some material and he is not personally present in the temple. Prabhupada quotes often this verse, Arche Vishnu Shiladri Gurushu Vaishnave Jati Buddhir. To think that Krishna is made of some material element, to think that a pure devotee is belonging to some caste, creed, he's from some country, he's white, he's black, it is of hellish mentality. Prabhupada quotes this from Padma Purana. As one becomes purified by chanting the holy name of Krishna, so we have to go on chanting. So one can become purified simply by chanting the holy name of a holy devotee. Now please, let's pay attention to Prabhupada's words here. The pure devotee of Krishna and the Lord himself are non-different. It is sometimes feasible to chant the holy name of a devotee. This is a very sanctified process. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was chanting the holy names of the gopis when his students criticized him. Why are you chanting the names of the gopis? Why not Krishna? Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was irritated by the criticism, and so there was some misunderstanding between him and the students. He wanted to chastise them for desiring to instruct him on the transcendental process of chanting. Because in the Bhagavatam it is explained, Esha Dishanam Ishasya, I forgot the verse. I'll probably share that later. That just as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental, his pure devotees are also transcendental to the three modes of material nature. They are beyond bhava and prema, all the pure devotees. So chanting their names, because Krishna himself mentions the pure devotees are in his heart, and in the pure devotee's heart, Krishna is there. So in essence, they are not different. Doesn't mean that the pure devotees become Krishna. No, that is not the fact. But because Krishna is subservient to a pure devotee, when we chant the pure devotee's name, it is not different. This is Prabhupada's realization here. So it is a bona fide process to chant the holy name of a pure devotee. Holy devotee, Prabhupada is saying. That means a pure devotee. See what Prabhupada has done for us. Every day we chant his name. Every day. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prishna. Every day when we offer the bhoga to Krishna or the deities in the altar, we chant Prabhupada's name. Such mercy Prabhupada has given us. The beauty of Krishna is that the devotees who are connected with his activities are also glorified. Right? We see in Bhagavatam, all the devotees of Krishna are glorified, like Arjuna, Prahlad, Janak Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, and many other devotees were not even in the renounced order of life, but were householders. The other day we were discussing in Bhakti Riksha, does it mean that someone was expressing that this Grihastha life is so entangling. We don't get proper time. But Prabhupada is saying here, doesn't matter what ashram we are in. There is no impediments for bhakti. Prabhupada, no material condition can check bhakti. Any condition one can practice bhakti. The conclusion is that a perfect yogi should always be accustomed to be seeing the form of Krishna. Unless the mind is fixed in that way, he should continue practicing yoga. So for us, what is yoga? Chanting and hearing is the main process for us. So unless and until our mind comes to a point where we can always concentrate and focus on Krishna, chanting and hearing should keep on going. In fact, Prabhupada writes in one purport that even a liberated person should continue. Doesn't mean that once a person becomes liberated, oh, I'm done, I don't want to chant anymore. No. We see all the great souls. Prabhupada, even in an airport, when the devotees are chanting and dancing, he will be having his beads in his hand and chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Hare. Prabhupada is showing as an Acharya. Text 19 is the purport for us to study today. Prabhupada is going to give us some insights as to how to focus the mind, because our mind keeps going here and there. Thus, always immersed in bhakti, the yogi visualizes the Lord standing, moving, lying, or sitting with him. For the pastimes of the Supreme Lord are always beautiful and attractive. Now, Prabhupada is going to give us something tangible for us to practice. The process of meditating on the form of Krishna with oneself and the process of chanting the glories and pastimes are the same. Because Krishna is absolute, any limb of bhakti that is connected to Krishna is absolute. The only difference is that hearing and fixing the mind on the pastimes of Krishna is easier than visualizing the form of Krishna within one's heart. Because, why? As soon as one begins to think of Krishna, especially in Kali Yuga, the mind becomes disturbed. And due to such agitation, the process of seeing Krishna within the mind is interrupted. Because we are so conditioned, Manda Sumanda Mateyo Manda Vagya Upatrita. In Kali Yuga, it's very difficult. I mean, for conditioned souls, for liberated persons, people who have already achieved love for Krishna, it is not so difficult for them to meditate on Krishna. But for conditioned living beings, Prabhupada is saying it is better to hear about Krishna and meditate on those pastimes. When there is sound vibrated, praising the transcendental pastimes of Krishna, however, one is forced to hear because Prabhupada writes, the only organ that is always active, even when we are sleeping, is the ear. Even when a crashing sound comes, we are alert immediately. Oh, something has happened. So when somebody is speaking, we are forced to hear. That hearing process enters into the mind and the practice of yoga is automatically performed. See, Prabhupada is giving something really tangible for us. For example, even a child can hear and derive the benefit of meditating on the pastimes of the Lord simply by listening to a reading from Bhagavatam that describes the Lord as he is going on the pasturing ground with his cows and friends. So even kids, that is the reason why we need to give kids Krishna Katha. Because Krishna Katha is relishable for everyone. Because the kids are also forced to hear and they like stories, right? Every kid naturally likes stories. So we should study and we should repeat the pastimes of all the avatars of Krishna. Throughout the pages of Bhagavatam, there's Prabhupada in fact writes, Krishna means, Prabhupada's here is mentioning specifically Krishna and Vrindavan, but doesn't mean that we should not narrate other devotees, other pastimes of Krishna. Prabhupada writes in Queen Kunti's section that doesn't mean that the Pandavas are no less than the Vrajavasis. We should never think like that. Even the pastimes of Krishna, the Pandavas are equally relishable for a devotee. So the Lord also says that the Mahatmas or great souls always engage in the process of chanting of the glories of the Lord. And just by hearing, others derive the same benefit. So we should hear from great souls. And in text 20, in fixing his mind on the eternal form of the Lord, the yogi should not take a collective view of all his limbs, but should fix the mind on each individual limb of the Lord. Prabhupada writes, Muni means one who's very expert in mental speculation or in thinking, feeling, and willing. Those who try to meditate on the form of Krishna are called Munis. Prabhupada writes, less intelligent. This is Prabhupada's realization. Whereas those who render actual service to Krishna are called Bhakti Yogas, Bhakti Yogis. The thought process described below is for the education of a Muni, not for Bhakti Yogis. On meditating on the different limbs of Krishna. Every jiva is different. Not everyone may be inclined to bhakti. So Krishna doesn't reject everyone. Because Krishna is there, in Bhagavad Gita, it is explained. Just like how if a flower is there close to us, Prabhupada explains in a purport, just by getting close to the flower and smelling the flower, we will get to know what it is. So similarly, because Krishna is sitting within our heart, he knows our heart. He knows what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what is going on in my consciousness. Everything Krishna knows. Just like how when we get closer to our flower, we know its fragrance. Similarly, Krishna knows everyone. So he is giving a gradual process for everybody who's not directly inclined to bhakti. To think of Krishna as a whole may sometimes be impersonal. Therefore, it is recommended here that one first think of his lotus feet, then his ankles, thighs, then the waist, then the chest, then the neck, and then the face, and so on. One should begin from the lotus feet and gradually rise to the upper limbs of the transcendental body of Krishna. This is how we have to take darshan in the temple. Even Srila Prabhupada's darshan, we have to take darshan like this from his lotus feet. Because Prabhupada himself said there is no difference between a pure devotee and the Lord qualitatively. No difference. So we have to take darshan like that. The devotee should concentrate first his mind on the lotus feet, which are adorned with the marks of thunderbolt. Now, these series of verses is called Dhyanam. A devotee, a Ashtanga yogi meditates on the different limbs of Krishna. So now it starts from the lotus feet. How does Krishna's lotus feet look? The marks of a thunderbolt, gourd, banner, and a lotus. The splendor of their beautiful ruby nails resembles the orbit of the moon and dispels the thick gloom of one's heart. So Prabhupada writes, Mayavadis are unable to fix his mind on the impersonal absolute truth. One can imagine any form he likes and fix his mind on the imaginary form. This is their understanding that, oh, let it be any form, let me meditate. No. Bhagavatam gives intricate details of Krishna's lotus feet. What are all there? This is one way to depict whether a person is really an incarnation of Krishna or not. In fact, in the fourth canto, the Brahmanas go and check Prithu Maharaj's soul and to see really if he has all these markings. And then they declare that he is really a empowered incarnation of Lord Vishnu. If a yogi looks upon the marks of the Lord's soul and on the blazing brilliance of his nails, then he can be freed from the darkness of ignorance in material existence. In other words, one has to fix his mind first on the lotus feet of Krishna if he wants to be freed from the darkness of ignorance in material existence. Right? Of course, while taking darshan of Krishna's Vigraha form, this is not our mood. But Prabhupada is saying this is the mood of a yogi. Because a yogi wants to liberate himself. A bhakti yogi is not concerned about liberation. A bhakti yogi wants to please Krishna. That is our goal. The blessed Lord Shiva becomes all the more blessed by bearing on his head the holy waters of the Ganges, which has its source in the water that washed the Lord's lotus feet. The Lord's feet acts like thunderbolts, hurled to shatter the mountain of sin stored in the mind of a meditating devotee. One should therefore meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord for a long time. And now, here in the purport, Prabhupada writes, Krishna is the supreme master of everyone. And Srila Prabhupada quotes Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Ekala Ishvara Krishna Arasabha Bhritya. The Supreme Lord is Krishna and everyone else, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, not to mention other demigods, is servant of Krishna. The same principle is described here. Lord Shiva is important. So we should not disregard. If we disregard Lord Shiva, it's a nama aparadha. Second offense of the holy name. Lord Shiva is important because he is holding on his head the holy Ganges water, which its origin in the lotus feet of, origin in the foot wash of Lord Vishnu. In Hari Bhakti Vilas, Srila Sanatan Goswami, it is said by Srila Sanatan Goswami, it is said that anyone who puts a Supreme Lord and the demigods, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, on the same level, at once becomes an atheist or a Pashandi. We should never consider the Supreme Lord Vishnu and the demigods are on equal footing. This is the second offense, chanting the holy name. So we should have a clear understanding of who is Lord Shiva and what is his role, how is he connected. He is not independent. So we need to understand all this in Tattva from a realized soul. Another significant point of this verse is that the mind of the conditioned soul, on account of its association with the material energy from time immemorial, contains heaps of dirt in the form of desires to lord it over material nature. This dirt is like a mountain, but a mountain can be shattered when hit by a thunderbolt. So meditating on the lotus feet of Krishna acts like a thunderbolt on the mountain of dirt in the mind of the yogi. So when we meditate on the lotus feet of Krishna, Prabhupada is saying all the dirt in our heart, mountains of dirt, heaps of dirt that we are still accumulating, gets shattered. The devotees are so fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna that they do not think of anything else. Those who practice the yoga system must meditate on the lotus feet of Krishna for a long time after following the regulative principles and thereby controlling the senses. This is for the Ashtanga Yoga process. It is specifically mentioned here, Bhagavatas Charanaravindam. One has to think of the lotus feet of Krishna. The Mayavadis imagine that one can think of the lotus feet of Lord Shiva, Brahma, Goddess Durga to achieve liberation, but that is not so. Right? They have all the 5 deities that they think that, oh, meditate on any one form, you'll get the same destination. No, that is not the fact. Krishna disagrees with that in Bhagavad Gita in the 7th chapter. Bhagavataha is specifically mentioned, means that Bhagavataha means the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu and no one else. Another significant phrase in this verse, Shiva Shivo Abhut. By his constitutional position, Lord Shiva is always great and auspicious. But since he has accepted on his head the Ganges water, which emanated from the lotus feet of the Lord, he has become even more auspicious and important. So very important. See, Prabhupada is writing, Lord Shiva is important. He's not an ordinary personality. That is the reason why Lord Shiva is the protector of every single holy place that we go. Even when we go to New Vrindavan, Lord Shiva is there by the mercy of the Prabhupada disciple there. The stress is on the lotus feet of Krishna. A relationship with the lotus feet of Krishna can even enhance the importance of Lord Shiva. What to speak of other ordinary living entities? So something for us to meditate on. I'm again repeating, a relationship with the lotus feet of Krishna can even enhance the importance of Lord Shiva. What to speak of other ordinary living entities? So even the pure devotees' lotus feet is also worshipable. Is also worshipable, right? We studied in the first canto that even more greater than worshipping or taking bath in Mother Ganges is worshipping the lotus feet of a pure devotee, right? So the lotus feet of a pure devotee and great personalities like Lord Shiva are worshipable because they always hold Krishna on their head. So we should never think all these personalities are ordinary. Yeah, I'll stop here at text 22. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Wonderful class. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu.